You are the light that attracts people to you. So if you're being fake and inauthentic, then that is who you are going to attract in your world. If you want people who are more grounded and real like you are, if that's how you are, then be that way because those are the people who are going to find you. Hi, I'm Jen Barnes, and you're about to experience how to ditch the old ways of doing things, embrace your neurodivergence, learn tips and tricks to function optimally, and love yourself, neurodivergence and all. Welcome to the Self-Loved Woman podcast. Hey, it's Jen. I'm so glad you're here. I want to take some time today to talk about holiday stress. And I want to talk about it a little bit differently because we're all ADHD women entrepreneurs. But I'm hearing from a lot of my clients, both in my private practice as well as other clients, ADHD clients, and even just people in general about the holidays being stressful. I notice this is a time of year that therapists get really busy because everyone is stressed. And so I think it is essential that we spend some time figuring out how do we get through this time of year and actually enjoy ourselves. I notice a lot of women are so busy making everyone else have an enjoyable holiday season that it just sucks for them. Like there's very little personal enjoyment, right? Maybe that glass of wine at a, excuse me, at a work party, but like that's about it. So, and you might be thinking like one glass of wine, Jen. That's fair. So today I want to talk about this a little bit differently. I've talked about this topic in the past and shared pretty much what everyone always talks about, which is like, take care of yourself this time of year, stay hydrated, say no, that kind of stuff. And sure, that all factors into it. But as ADHD women entrepreneurs, we have specific skill sets that we can use to create a holiday season that works for us with ADHD. And we're going to be borrowing from my ADHD mastery blueprint: overcome, focus, achieve, attract, in order to be able to do this. So that's the framework that I teach in my program to help ADHD women entrepreneurs replace their full-time income. And so we're going to actually break that down a bit here. So even if you're like, the holidays don't stress me out, you're going to hear a little bit more about the framework that I do in my work with clients. So the first thing that we talk about is overcoming hidden obstacles. And in business, this often looks like limiting beliefs around money or imposter syndrome. Certainly it can be fear. It can also be overwhelm. So there's these different hidden obstacles that I share in my program. Today, I want to talk about the hidden obstacles we face around the holidays. A lot of us have a long string of old stories and limiting beliefs about what the holidays should be like. It's supposed to be magical. Like, it has to be magical for our kids. If you have kids, you're like, it has to be magical, or, oh, I have to see my entire family on whatever holiday that you celebrate, right? There's all these beliefs that are just really stuck as something that we think we have to do. And I'm not saying you might not choose to do those things anyway, but a lot of times what gets us stuck is we feel like we have to do these things because we have the belief that if we don't, we're bad, right? Like you're a bad daughter if you don't go to Thanksgiving if you celebrate it, or harvest if you call it that, to more honor the indigenous peoples. So you might think like, oh, I'm bad if I don't go to that. And the reality is there might be some people in your family who think that, but that doesn't mean it's true. Right. So the first step in being able to deal with the holidays is really taking a look at what are those old stories? What are these deep rooted beliefs that you have about what this time of year needs to look like? What obligations you feel like you have, right? There's another word, like we feel like we're obligated to do this. But I got to tell you, anytime someone feels obligated to spend time with me and like they're doing it out of obligation, that feels really shitty. Like, I don't want you to spend time with me unless you want to spend time with me, like for real, And so a lot of times when we do things out of obligation, people can tell that we really don't want to. And I'll say there's probably people, of a certain age who are like, nope, it's your obligation. You have to be here because this is what family does. And for them, they might not have that same feeling about it. I don't know if it's they have a different kind of awareness of how things are or beliefs about how things should be, but certainly there's a difference there, right? But I know for me, if I feel obligated, then I'm not super excited to see that person. And no matter how much I try and act nice and kind and all those things, there's still a part of me that's resentful that I have to be there or feel like I have to be there, right? Because you can do what you want. And it ends up coming off in the interactions, right? So, doing things out of obligation or because we believe we have to, or these old stories or limiting beliefs, oftentimes can negatively impact our relationship. In our business, it can negatively impact things there as well, right? But today we're just talking about holiday stuff. But just an aside, right? Because this is about ADHD women entrepreneurs as well. So, what I want you to do is spend time, and you can do what you want. What I would recommend is you spend time unpacking like, what beliefs or stories do I have about what's supposed to happen this time of year? Where do I feel trapped in this? Where do I feel like, okay? And to really step back and say, like, you know what? I do have a choice. Now, I'm not saying you have a choice between amazing things. You might have a choice to, going to a celebration and being appreciated by your family, even though you're crabby and unhappy and whatever, or not going and then dealing with other people's drama because you chose not to go, right? Like, I'm not saying those are two amazing choices to choose from, but you do have a choice. And sometimes what can help us with these limiting beliefs is at least recognizing that we are not trapped, that we actually do have a choice, even if the choice is between two kind of shitty options. So that is really step one, is figuring out what we do with these old stories, these limiting beliefs that we have, and working our way through them. The next piece of this is clarifying your focus, prioritizing, and then concentrating. And that's the next piece of the framework. We're actually not going to talk about concentrating today, but I do want to talk a bit about clarifying your focus. Because with ADHD, we can get distracted with all these different things. And we already have, many of us have a lot on our plate for how our brain is in this world. So if we're going to add things to our plate, in my mind, it needs to make sense. They need to be actual true priorities, which might mean that you don't do everything. And that's okay. You get to not do everything. You get to pick and choose. And so what I would encourage you to do for this step is to clarify your intentions for the season. You already have worked through the old stories that you have about what this should be. But what is your actual intention this year? What do you want this holiday season to look like? If you could have it the way you want it, what would that be like? And then to start to think about, if I had that, what would that, what would that look like? What would that entail? If I had that, what would that mean then? Then what would I have? And if I had that, then what would I have? So for example, let's say that you want a peaceful holiday season where you have fun and you get to see the people who matter most to you, right? Okay, so if you had that, what would you have? What comes to mind for me is then I wouldn't have as much stress and I'd actually have fun. So if I had that, what would I have? Oh, I could just relax. I could just be and not have to do all the extra. And that's important to me, because being able to just be and show up authentically and not have to like make big fusses out of things is aligned with how I want to be in the world. Right? If your intention for the season is to make this season magical for your kids, then you get to figure out, okay, if this is magical for your kids, then what do you have? Right? So let's say if it's magical for your kids, then you have kids who wake up Christmas morning and they, with their sparkly eyes, and they're so excited, right? You don't get to actually decide how other people react, by the way. So that may be a rough intention. Like, you could set it up to be as magical as possible, but sometimes kids have tantrums and it has nothing to do with you, and that makes things less magical. But, it's something to think about. Like, oh, okay, well, if you made it be as magical as possible for your kids, even if they didn't experience it as magical, what would you have? It might be that you feel like you're a quote good mom. Okay. And what makes that mean you're a good mom? How is that connected? What limiting belief do you have there? But if you felt like you're a good mom, then what would you have? Right? And to really just start to unpack this, because then As we get into the prioritizing phase, if you get clear on why you're doing all of this, what your intention is, and even like figuring out your core values, which is a whole nother, that's like a big exercise that we spend a lot of time in my program doing, is getting clear on your core values. And when you think about your core values, your intention, your deepest reason for doing things, then when other stuff comes up, it can be like, does this match that? Does this match that? In our business, if we have a task that we can't get ourselves to do, sometimes it can be because it doesn't line up with those things. The same is true with the holiday season. Like if you're like, oh my gosh, I just cannot get myself to make cookies for this cookie exchange. I just can't even. Well, then pull back. What are your core values? Does it align with that? For me, one of my core values is health and wellness. So being part of a cookie exchange where I get a crap ton of cookies is not super aligned with that. I don't need a crap ton of cookies. I live by myself. So if you're in that boat where you're like, oh, okay, you know, my biggest value is health and wellness, or I'm trying to have a healthy, let's say your intention for the season is try and do this in a healthy way so that you're not gaining 10 pounds or something, or your clothes don't fit after the holidays, maybe, you know, whatever it is, then being part of a cookie exchange doesn't line up with that. And that might be why it's hard to get yourself to do it. So maybe this year you choose not to. Or you, I don't know, like donate the cookies. I don't know, bring them to work, which is kind of, I always wonder, like, I'm like, ooh, should I be bringing this to work? Do my coworkers want this there? Right. So there's that. But this is assuming you still have a full-time job while you're building your business. If you already don't have a full-time job, then I don't know, you can give them to neighbors or bring them to a nursing home. I don't know if they take baked goods though. So that might be something to check out. But my point is to figure out like what aligns, what is your deepest why? What is your intention? What are your values? And does this task align with it? Because that will help you prioritize. Knowing what you really want out of this holiday season will help you get clear on those priorities and what you actually need to do. If you're hoping for a peaceful holiday season, going to every single Christmas party or holiday party, whatever you call it, that you're invited to is probably not in alignment with that. Unless you're an extreme extrovert and that's peaceful for you. As an introvert, that is like awful. So a lot of this is getting to know your own self and what you really want, what you want for you. And if you're a parent, maybe what you want for your family. That will help you get clear and know what to focus on so that you can then delete the things that you don't want to do or even delegate some of it. Some of this stuff doesn't have to be done by you. You don't have to do everything. And if you're like, oh, I do if I want it done right, well, then that's a you issue because you're requiring perfectionism, which is a whole nother thing, right? And this comes up in business too. So this is relevant because a lot of times entrepreneurs have a hard time delegating because we want things done perfectly, right? And so it's like, oh, hey, yeah, maybe I can let go a little bit of every single frosted sugar cookie looking perfect and just have my kids do them, which means some of them are going to have too much frosting on part of the cookie and no frosting on the other part of the cookie. And that's okay. Right? It's just part of the deal, right? But delegating is incredibly important. Or maybe your spouse is your elf on a shelf helper so that, you know, and maybe your spouse doesn't do quite as good of a job as helping the elf find their new spot. And so perhaps, you know, it's hard for you to delegate it. Or maybe it's just like, they're going to do what they're going to do. Right? Like you can't do everything all the time or you'll drive yourself insane. So clarifying your focus, aligning it with your values and your deepest why is going to actually help you know what your priorities are, what you can delete off that list, what you can delegate, and what you actually want to follow through on. The third piece of this framework is to get shit done. And there are certain ADHD ways we have to do this. I think one of the biggest things we have to remember is, first of all, the way we get stuff done is going to change from time to time. And all of us are going to do it differently. There's no one right way. So if you're like, oh, I just need to do it, you know, this way every single time, that's not going to work out probably. But what I would suggest first and foremost is checking in to make sure that whatever it is you're trying to do does indeed match with your values, your deepest why, your priorities for this season. Because if it doesn't, that's going to be something that's getting in the way of you being able to do it. So that is an essential first step in this. Another important piece is going to be making sure that the task actually is interesting to you. Neurotypical people can do things because they're important, and that's whether they think they're important or someone else thinks they're important, or if there's a reward or a consequence. That is just not how it works with the ADHD brain. We are motivated based on interest. We have an interest-based nervous system. And so if we want to get ourselves to do something, it's got to be interesting to us. So you can manufacture interest, like you can find something super duper interesting, right? Like it reminds me of this book that I had to read when I was a school social worker on how to teach reading, right? Because I was in a rural school district and all of us had to teach classes. And so even I had to teach reading in my class, right? So I was reading this book on how to teach reading, and she talked about like she was going to go to, I don't know, I think it was Michigan, to teach reading to a group of biology teachers. So she had to read part of the book to teach them how to teach reading with the biology book, right? But she had zero interest in the biology book. So she was like, how am I going to get myself to read this? She was on the plane on her way out, and the person next to her coughed. And suddenly she was very interested in the biology book to see if there was any explanation as to how quickly germs can spread, because she didn't want to be sick while she's giving this presentation. This was, of course, pre-COVID. So there was, not a lot of masking and things were different back then, but still she was afraid of being sick. So she suddenly has an interest. She has a purpose for reading this book. So a lot of times we can manufacture interest. We can create interest by making something interesting or having a reason for it to be interesting. We can also do this with novelty. I actually sometimes wonder if Elf on a Shelf came to us from someone who has ADHD, because it's different every night, right? Like there's novelty there. It's also another way we can do it is make sure it aligns with our passion and purpose. So we are motivated to do things that do align with our passion and purpose. So let's say, you want your tree and your decorations to be up by you want them up by, let's say you celebrate Thanksgiving or harvest, and you want your tree and your decorations up by Thanksgiving or harvest dinner because you want people to actually see it, right? Well, if you have a passion for decorating or bringing light to people or beauty to people, then certainly having your tree or whatever other decorations up in time for that makes a lot of sense, right? Whereas if you just don't give a shit and you're like, whoever sees it, that tree is for me, then probably it's going to be hard to motivate yourself to do it, at least for having it align with your passion and purpose, right? I will say for me, putting up a tree, oftentimes I'll put on like holiday music and make it really fun. Though I can't do a tree right now. I've got cats who are only 2. And if I put up a tree, I would spend my entire month of the rest of November and December fighting with them about not chewing on ornaments and breaking them. So there's that. Right? So while I this is an example of step 2, clarifying your priorities, right? Clarifying your focus. While I love having my tree, especially during this time of year when it's darker outside where I live, I also value my sanity, and I value my sanity more than the beauty of a tree. So I am opting to not do a tree to protect my sanity, because if you power struggle with a cat over dangling ornaments from a tree, you're probably going to lose. So then I don't prioritize a tree while my cats are young, right? It's just how it is. Doesn't mean I'm not disappointed and there's not feelings to work through there, but it's just part of the thing, right? So getting back to getting stuff done, we want to make it interesting for ourselves. It is essential that it's interesting. That can be making it interesting. It can be making it novel, like something different. It can also be about aligning something with our passion or purpose. Another piece of this can be creating like a competition or a challenge out of it. Like, I'm going to get all my Christmas decorations up by 8 p.m. tonight or something like that, right? Or we can set a timer or whatever. That's certainly a way to create a challenge or a competition, right? You can call your sister and be like, let's have a race. Let's see who can get their tree up by tonight at 8 p.m., right? So those are some ways that you can go about making it interesting. Another thing you can do is to create connection or at least some kind of human presence with it, right? We use body doubling a lot. And I think the reason body doubling works is because it makes it interesting. Also a little bit of a competition or some kind of like external pressure, right? So if you're having a hard time getting yourself to bake cookies and you want to bake cookies because that's something you decided is important and you're having a hard time doing it, bake cookies with a friend, or put on a Zoom call and have your friend bake cookies the same time you're baking cookies, or you can bake cookies while they clean their house. It doesn't matter, right? Like, but just to have the Zoom call on, sometimes that can be a way to create interest as well as novelty and also connection to get ourselves to do it. All right. The last piece that we're going to talk about here is step 4 of the ADHD business mastery blueprint, which is attract your ideal clients. So we're not talking about attracting clients, but because this is about the holidays, but rather talking about attracting the people you want into your life around this time of year. I get it. A lot of us feel obligated to see family. And I'm not trying to be like anti-family or anything, but I'm also a trauma therapist. And I recognize that some people have true dysfunction in their family that is unsafe. And some of us have dysfunction that we just don't feel like putting up with anymore. Like we're just done. It's like, no, I'm not doing this. That doesn't mean you don't have to see your family, or well, you don't have to do anything, actually. It doesn't mean you can't choose to see your family. But if you are choosing to see your family and you really don't feel like it, really making sure that you understand it's a choice, right? And then being your authentic self. Because here's the truth. You are the light that attracts people to you. So if you're being fake and inauthentic, then that is who you are going to attract in your world. If you want people who are more grounded and real like you are, if that's how you are, then be that way, because those are the people who are going to find you. If you like doing like all the big stuff and really amazing and all the makeup and the hair, then do that, because those are the people that will be attracted to you. I probably won't be there because that'll exhaust me. Not that I was invited, right? Because you are the light that attracts people to you. And so whether you do this in your business by showing up authentically there, or you do this in your life by showing up authentically there, eventually, as you show up more and more authentically to more and more authentic to who you are, you will attract people who want to spend time with you. That means the types of people who are inviting you to a holiday gathering are people you actually want to spend time with, right? So for me, my worst nightmare of a holiday gathering is everyone just standing around talking, making small talk, drinking, and having hors d'oeuvres that are things I don't eat because I'm like 95% vegan. So like that is like my worst nightmare. I have no interest in that, right? So if I act like that's something I'm interested in, then those are going to be the invitations I get. Whereas if I'm like, you know what, I would much rather have coffee with a couple of close friends or go on like a winter hike with a close friend. That's my jam. If people want to get together and play board games, like that's my jam. I would love to do that to celebrate the holidays, just to celebrate togetherness, right? And help us move through the darkness. Those are totally things that would align with me. And as I show up authentically, those are the people that I've attracted. And this is, like I said, certainly true in your business too, but also in your life. So start to pay attention to how you're showing up. If you like are not into the big noisy party, then don't go to the big noisy party. Or if you choose to, be you there, because then the people who are like you will also be like you. Be free to be like you. They'll, you'll find the people who are like you and they'll feel free to be themselves, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So it's important in our business and in life that we are being authentic so we can attract the people to us, right? Part of this is big because in our business, we want to be able to actually attract people that we can help, right? But also it's important because then the people that show up are people we actually enjoy helping. I don't think that we can all help everyone. I will tell you, I am not everyone's cup of tea. I don't think I can help every single woman entrepreneur with ADHD grow their business in 12 months to replace their full-time income. I don't think that's possible. I don't think I can do that. There are plenty of people who would be like, yeah, no, you are not my jam. Right? And that's fine because there is someone who can help those people. So by being your authentic self, you draw your ideal clients to you who you can actually help get results. And you draw the people in that you want in your social circle. I'm going to tell you, even like showing up authentically in my family, I find that the people I want to have those deeper conversations with are the ones that actually even just sit next to me. Whereas the people that maybe their values are maybe not quite the same, they're at the table and I interact with them, but we're not the ones having the deep conversations about what book we've read, because that's what I value. So let yourself show up this holiday season the way that you want to be, because then you will attract more of what you want during this time. So as you put these pieces together, as you help yourself overcome those old stories, those limiting beliefs, some of this is working with your nervous system, like trying to regulate, and certainly, taking care of yourself. Yes, you need to sleep during this time of year, just as much as any time of year. It's essential for us ADHDers. We need to get movement in our body because it helps us focus. It helps us feel good. We also need to do things like mindfulness practices and eating nutritiously and staying hydrated. All of that is going to help you overcome those hidden obstacles. Second, we want to get very clear on our priorities and where we place our focus by aligning with our values and our deepest intention for this time of year. Third, we want to help ourselves get shit done by doing it the ADHD way instead of forcing ourselves to do it the way everyone else does. And lastly, we want to show up authentically so that we are attracting the people to us that we actually want around us this holiday season. When we do all of these things, we will actually have fun because we're no longer forcing. We are choosing what we want. And yes, sometimes there's trade-offs in what we choose. We might choose to spend time with a relative that we don't like because we value family, right? But as we choose our own adventure for the holidays, we will actually be able to have fun. So whatever it is you're celebrating, happy that. And I'll see you next time. If you're not following already, please make sure to follow. And I'd love it if you would comment on what resonated in this episode. If there's anything that didn't resonate, please comment that and be sure to share. All right, take care.